What's going on, everybody? Welcome, everyone, to the Best of, Worst of, the podcast where we take the bad with the good in the world of pop culture. My name is Jason, and joining me today, a man who I often refer to as my boy wonder, my co-host Jesse.
No. Arch nemesis, maybe, like any good hero-villain combo, they're almost friends, so maybe that's what we are, but I don't know. Dynamic duo. I don't know that I like being the boy wonder, although I do frequently wear green underwear and flesh-colored tights. So maybe that's... Hello, Jason.
When we decided this topic, that's the first thing that popped into my head. Hey, man, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I am sitting in the comfort of my bedroom, hoping that my children don't come running in, which is a real possibility, as we are, again, recording remotely.
Yes. We hope everyone out there is staying safe and doing everything they can to be part of this team and help prevent the spread of this by staying home if possible. I understand there's so much more to that for so many people out there, but anybody who listens, I have no idea if we have any healthcare listeners or frontline emergency work listeners, but if we do, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Or retail workers.
Retail workers, a grocery store, we're unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've been there.
All that you do.
Yeah, I mean, not during a pandemic. I've never been worked anywhere during a pandemic other than right now at this moment. But
it's interesting. When I was running my cobbler shop during the Spanish flu of 1918.
Yeah, I mean, you were essential business. People needed shoes.
That's exactly. Who else is going to cobble?
I mean, people needed new shoes frequently. You get foot rot working in the coal mines and stuff, when you're 8-9 years old. So
I'll tell you, what did me in? The lady across the street who opened a shop that only sold cobblers.
Yeah.
She was a bake shop. It was so confusing. People walking around with pies on their feet, people trying to eat shoes. I mean,
oh man. Well, all right. So this week, Jason and I are talking the most famous bat in the world, and no, I'm not referring to the one that COVID-19 came from. I mean everyone's favorite famous vigilante orphan, Batman.
Batman.
The Batman to some.
No.
You're gonna get us sued, man. Specifically, we're talking the movies of Batman, of course, which is a storied cinematic franchise with more eyeliner and tights than a midnight screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Spoilers do lie ahead, as always, for the movies we'll be discussing, so protect yourself with some hockey pads, or at least that skip button. Yes. It took me forever to realize in The Dark Knight that he's saying, I'm not wearing hockey pads. I thought he said hockey pants. And I'm like, what does that mean? But
I never even knew that was a line.
Yes, it is. Now. So let's try to live long enough to see ourselves become the villain, Jason, with some.
Oh, it's that time.
Yes.
Fun facts.
There we go. Which voice was that?
I don't know. I think I was trying to do a Batman voice. It was really bad.
Ooh, that's going to make our stinger very interesting. Holy fun facts, Batman. Here we go. Batman was created by artist Bob Kane and writer Bill Finger. Great. William Finger. And he first appeared in Detective Comics. Because we're recording remotely, it seems very delayed to me. Anyway, so created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, barely knew her. Batman first appeared in Detective Comics number 27 in 1939.
Good night. That's when they all kind of started, right? I think Superman was in the 20s, but
he might have been 30s too, I think. I mean, like early, maybe like 34, maybe. I think just about all your major comics were in the 30s. And the first Batman comic was Detective Comics number 27. It featured a villain. It's set up like Commissioner Gordon's in that first one. There's no Alfred, there's no Robin or anything. They did all come in very early though.
Yeah, there is
within
a
the first
Batgirl
couple years. Is there?
No,
Oh,
no.
I
I
thought
was gonna say there's
assumed,
Batgirl, but it's 1930s, so it's she walks by and Batman's like, "Bawoo!" That was the dumbest joke I've ever made in my life.
Well, you
His
have to live
eyes
with it.
bugged out. I
You
do.
You have
I
to
have
live
to
with
live
that.
with it.
I see. I thought maybe there really was a Batgirl, and you remembered reading it, and when you picked up that first comic at the dime shop on your way home from from your cobbler apprenticeship. So that was
That was more than an
1939.
apprentice. Okay. All right.
Anyway, that was 1939. The first one featured a villain named Alfred Stryker, or some Strikes or something like that. Strider maybe. But within the first couple of years, you did get I think Joker, Hugo Strange, he's not like a super well-known Batman villain, but he's pretty iconic in Batman mythology. And Catwoman all premiered within a year of it debuting. So I think Hugo Strange was the first of those, and then I think it was Joker, and then Catwoman followed a couple months later. So they've all been around for 80 years, which is just wild to me. And it didn't take long for the film adaptations of Batman to start, because in 1943 we saw the first Batman film adaptation as a 15-chapter serial. So the serial storyline, like all forms of entertainment around World War II, was essentially wartime propaganda, with the story seeing the Batman, as he's referred to, as a secret U.S. government agent attempting to sabotage the schemes of Japanese agent Dr. Daka, operating in Gotham City at the height of World War II.
Interesting.
It proved very successful, and it spawned a sequel serial in 1949, although they did recast Batman. I think Robin may have been featured in the sequel. So within 1939, Batman debuts. By 43, they're already making movies about him.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. The next live adaptation was a very famous one. Why don't you tell us about it, Jason?
Oh, absolutely. Bang! Zoom! It was the next live action adaptation was the famous Adam West series on TV from 66 to 68, which spawned its own movie in 1966, which sort of derailed Batman in the media due to its very campy approach. And I would say I saw way too much of the Batman series. I don't think I've ever seen that movie. That for a lot of reasons, that movie has not been available on home video for quite a while. But yeah, it's but the campy nature made Batman so uncool. The way they did that, and with the silk and all that kind of stuff. What messed me up here is when it said that 1966 movie derailed film adaptations for nearly 25 years, and I was thinking, wait, that can't be. But when you realize that it was only the 80s was only 20 years after 1966, it's
right,
pretty disconcerting.
Yes. I like that original. I liked the Adam West series a lot when I was a kid, because it was just so silly, and I liked Batman, and we'll get into more of the movies that came out in the 90s and stuff. I was a big fan of those, but I just was, being a little kid at the time, I just wanted any form of Batman that I could get. I was a big Batman fan growing up, and I liked the Adam West ones a lot. My dad watched them when he was a kid, so we would kind of watch them together. The movie's pretty good. It features like all his main villains, Penguin and Riddler and Catwoman, and the Joker with Cesar Romero, who refused to shave his mustache, so they just painted over his mustache. There's a pretty great fight scene on a top of a submarine, if I believe. Listener Ron, who has emailed us before, he can shoot us an email and let us know for sure, because I know he is a fan of the old Adam West. Batman 66, I think, is sort of what it's referred to within the Batman mythology.
Okay.
So to your point, that does kind of derail Batman in the media for a bit. So through the 70s and into the 80s, Batman was pretty much relegated to like some cartoon shows that, like Scooby-Doo crossovers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The original Batman comic, like even to have come out in the 30s and be big in the 40s, was fairly dark. I mean, especially, in comparison to the Adam West one, if I recall correctly, like I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like the first, I don't know, 6 issues the Joker's in, he kills like a dozen people. Like it was a darker comic for that era. I don't think we realize that because when you see like old, like you see like pages from those old comics and stuff, just the art style is so cartoonish, that we've certainly come a long way in that regard with the comic books. But that original series, from what I've heard, was fairly dark, all things considered. The Adam West one, of course, was aimed at children. So the modern Batman films began, of course, with Tim Burton's Michael Keaton-driven Batman in 1989, I believe. And that was the next live-action adaptation after the Batman series. And that was the 80s had saw The Dark Knight Returns and some really successful graphic novels, I believe by Frank Miller. And that brought Batman kind of to these dark, sort of, moody, gritty imagery that we picture Batman with now. And Tim Burton was channeling more of that Batman that had become big in the 80s. The Killing Joke was another one that was a very popular graphic novel that was very dark in its tone and content. And then,
do you think?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, do you think so there's nothing going on in superhero movies at this time other than really Superman throughout from the late 70s into the early to mid 80s. Both DC properties.
Incredible Hulk, I guess. But
okay. Well, I'm thinking in movie. That's TV.
Sure.
But I'm trying to think with it. Oh, really?
Okay. I'm being a contrarian. They made TV movies.
Okay. Within that world, I wonder if this movie gets made without the success of the first couple of Superman movies.
I don't think so. And I know, this was it was in production. I mean, they've been talking about a Batman movie back into the 70s, I think. And then especially after the graphic novels had gotten big in the 80s and there was sort of that return to this dark, form, so to speak, with Batman, there had been talk for years about trying to do something different to pull it out of sort of obscurity that Batman had fallen into after the Adam West stuff. But the Superman movies being as successful as they were, I think definitely helped the interest in these. One was because there was 4 Superman movies.
Yeah, I only count 3, but yes, there's 4.
And those were all 70s and 80s, right? Did any of those get into the 90s? I don't think they did.
No, I think it was like 77, 79, 83, 85. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
Roughly that time frame.
I'm going to test myself now.
So that puts you right up to when Tim Burton started making the movie and or made his Batman movie. And I
was almost. It's 78, 80, 83, 87. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So 87,
so it was
very close. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's back to the Batman franchise, including the aforementioned adaptations, Adam West, the serials, animated films. Of course, there was the animated series, very popular. I loved it, and it came out in '92, and that spawned some very good animated movies. Including all of those, there have been 16 Batman films, with another due in 2021, starring R. Pats, or Robert Pattinson, as some call him. I called him that. That's due in 2021, although now with COVID-19 delaying production on everything, we'll see when we actually get that movie. And let's do our fill in the blank, Jason.
Oh, really?
Let's do it. The Batman films have grossed nearly blank dollars in revenue.
Ooh. All right. 3.3 billion.
About 5 billion.
Oh.
So yeah. Which I think, oh gosh, about $1 billion of that is The Dark Knight. So,
It
I mean,
is. It is. Yeah.
so honestly would have thought maybe a higher number. I've got another fill in the blank for you. This is, I think, talking about the Batman franchise as a whole. So I think this is including like merchandising and, probably the film revenue, but just the Batman franchise as a whole. How much do you believe it has grossed in dollars?
Mm-hmm. 693 billion.
29 billion. That was.
Well, I'm trying to think back to the 30s.
Sure. Yeah, but I don't guess those, the 5-cent comics were adding a lot to the revenue. I did think 29 felt kind of low, but I mean, I think we underestimate how much $1 billion is. So 29 billion is pretty solid.
Hey, look, I've been hearing a lot of trillions thrown around the last couple of weeks. I mean,
it's true.
I don't know, I can't keep track of all the zeros.
I think, my favorite way to look at million versus billion and all this, it's something like, if I might get this wrong, but it's like it would take you. This is gonna get the idea across, but it's probably not the exact numbers. It takes you about 11 days to count to 1 million, 11 hours, something like that. I don't remember.
Yes.
It's not that long. It's a few days, maybe a week, to count to 1 million. It takes it's something like 11 years to count to 1 billion, and then it's like a trillion is like 11,000 years or something. It's absurd. Yeah. Like we put those numbers together because they, in our heads they're just all big numbers. But like, so 29 billion is quite respectable for the Batman franchise to have grossed. If someone can look up that statistic, email us, please. I could do it easily, but I like to make people engage with us and force them.
There you go.
I say wrong things and then just tick people off and wait for them to email us.
Look, if we're going to have fun facts, we can just have the fact check section at the end where you all write in and tell us all the things we're wrong about.
Yeah, maybe it should be like fun maybe facts.
Okay. Fake
news, maybe. We'll go with that. Fun fake news.
You're not going to bring politics into this.
What is so Jason, what's sort of your history with Batman?
Well, he and I go way back.
Right.
He's such a scoundrel. He took me out. No, I'm joking. Okay. I don't know where this was going. I was aware of Batman, I think, primarily from the 92 animated series.
Yes.
Started watching that a lot. I was right in the wheelhouse, like 11, 12 years old, right when that came out. And that corresponded to Batman Returns, which for years was my single favorite Batman movie because it hit in that sweet spot of age. Yeah. There's a lot of movies that you recognize they're not great, but they were the greatest thing you had ever seen at that moment in your life.
Oh, yeah.
And Batman Returns fell into that. It took me a long time to come around on the original Batman from 1989.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to see it. I was a Batman Returns guy. Like that was the movie in my mind.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that was the aim. I think with Batman Returns and that franchise, and we'll get into some of that, of course, as we go, but that particular, or those first few Batman movies, the first one was very dark, and really kind of, edgy and not necessarily for kids. And then I think with Batman Returns, they wanted to capitalize a bit on the merchandising options with toys and lunchboxes and clothes and everything. So I think that one they shifted the tone a little bit. It's still kind of a weirdly dark movie.
It's weird and dark. I remember falling in love from a toy perspective.
Yes.
With the Batmobile. I wanted that Batmobile so badly.
Oh, me too.
Me neither. I've never read a comic book. Batman's just one of those things that exists. I think I always had some kind of an affinity for Batman because not growing up in the comic world and not growing up reading books, I I leaned towards him because of his lack of superhero powers.
Yeah.
He was
Oh
just
yeah.
a everyman, which I think,
A
Marvel
billionaire
has
playboy
that.
everyman.
y- right. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
know
I
what you
know
mean.
what you
Yeah.
mean. Yes. Well, I mean, I guess Marvel, which I didn't realize this at the time, had Iron Man. That
Hmm.
is essentially their version of this.
Right.
Um, but I think the two superheroes I always kind of leaned towards, and I think it also was because there were pretty good. Um, well, I'll say three pretty good cartoon series on right around the same time that I was growing up. There was the Batman series, there was Spider-Man, and there was the X-Men.
Oh
Those
yes.
were
Yep.
my three that to me were my favorites. Um, but
Exactly the same. Yeah.
yeah,
Those not that '90s era of comic book cartoons, which was really, I mean, this was before. Yeah, I mean, we have Marvel movies and DC movies coming out, all the time now. So obviously the market is saturated. But at the time, your only superhero movies were the Batman movies at this era. They weren't actively making Superman movies. They
right.
hadn't, I think they tried a Captain America movie around this time that was terrible. They tried a
That and a
Fantastic Four
Punisher.
movie.
They
Tried a
did. And they tried
Punisher
a
with Dolph
Punisher.
Lundgren,
They did.
which
Yeah.
was awful. But so yeah, I mean,
This
this
is
was
all you
right down
had.
my alley. This was right, yeah. I mean, and with the Batman animated series, like you said, X-Men, Spider-Man, that was my bread and butter. I was a big Batman Returns fan also, uh, and followed those. I mean, those first four movies leading up to the Clooney one, which we will absolutely get into. Big surprise. I loved them all. I mean, I very unironically as a kid, I just loved them all. And again, I think a lot of that was the toys and the cereals and the video games and everything.
Sure.
So now as a very adult man, which by the way, happy birthday, late birthday. I won't say your age, but
Thank
Eric
you.
Jason's birthday was this past week. So happy birthday, buddy.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. So,
Um, what is your favorite Batman movie now in your adult life?
favorite Batman movie
Yes.
is Bat Boy. No, I'm joking.
The story of that weird guy from the Weekly World News. Do you remember that phenomenon back in the late '90s?
No,
You
I
don't
was
remember? It was like,
referencing the very heartwarming documentary of the Make-A-Wish child who wanted to spend the day
oh
as Batman, and they made a
yeah,
movie about him. That
yeah,
movie's
Bat
actually
Kid.
very Bat Kid.
Yeah,
That movie is very um very heartwarming. It gets
I've heard.
dusty. Um, no, my favorite Batman movie. I want to say I'm gonna say Dark Knight, although I like Batman Begins a lot.
Yeah, me too.
And then it's got to be Batman Returns, some
Yeah.
version of those three, either for nostalgia purposes or just from executional,
Hmm.
just quality side of things. It's one of those.
Yeah, I think nostalgia plays such a big part in it for me. I recognize that The Dark Knight is the best Batman movie. Um, Batman Begins a very close second, I think, but I do love Batman Returns. I mean, and if I'm in a pinch, I don't know that I pick Dark Knight over Batman Returns. Like I really like
If you're
Batman
gonna
Returns.
watch one,
It's a good movie, so it's got that going for it. But it's just a great performance from Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer
oh,
are both just killing it. Like they're just
Oswald
eating it
Cobblepot
up.
is an underrated villain. DeVito is so good in that.
Yeah, he's disgusting.
He is beautifully disgusting, and I don't know. I was maybe a little young for that, but Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman may have made me a man. Um,
I mean, that movie's been out as long as I can remember. So, um, but I can imagine it awakening many feelings in many people across all genders. She is, yeah, I mean, she's perfect as Catwoman. That's exactly what
no,
you
she's
expect from Catwoman. Like, she can fight. There's a
yep,
sort of supernatural element to her, but she's got all the sultriness.
yeah.
They're just great performances. I mean, and which leads us into, of course, the big question when you're talking Batman: who is your Batman?
So my Batman, I, I'm gonna say Bale because I don't want to give your answer, just to be contrarian. But I think Bale plays him capably
Hmm.
across the best movies of the franchise.
Yeah,
And so I'm gonna go Bale, but I love Kevin Conroy from the animated series.
absolutely. Y-
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Kevin Conroy, I'm going to say, and the answer you didn't want to step on, Michael Keaton
Right.
is, I think, that is who I think of when I think of Batman. I think Christian Bale was a better Batman in Batman Begins, and I think he was a good Bruce Wayne, and he was a good Batman, and that's also that movie gives us the most Bruce Wayne we get from any of the other ones. So he had a lot more opportunity, I think, to be Bruce Wayne than the other actors have been, but
Mhm.
he Christian Bale, I think the problem with The Dark Knight is he gets upstaged, as we'll get into. But I
Yeah.
think in that Batman, I think in Batman Begins, I think Christian Bale is fantastic. Um, but I have to go with Keaton and Conroy. Conroy is iconic, and just that's exactly what I imagine Batman sounding like.
No,
Um,
Conroy. I think Kevin Conroy's Batman and is it Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime? Those are the two things that I almost wish they would have dubbed Conroy over the movies. Like
right,
as like those are the voices.
right,
Period.
yeah. And Mark Hamill as Joker,
Oh, he's great.
it's
Great.
fantastic. Let's see.
So what? You know what? I'm
Villains.
gonna.
Let's talk
Yeah.
villains. Well, we
Let's
talked Danny
talk
DeVito.
villains.
Danny DeVito, Michelle Pfeiffer, as far as in my favorite Batman villains. Of course, Ledger's Joker, but that kind of goes without saying, I think, at this point. But Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito are the only ones that really stand out to me. Like if I'm being honest with myself, if I think of every other, your Jim
Wait,
Carrey's.
you're not a Mr. Freeze guy. You're not a. No, no,
Oh,
no.
we'll get
Between
into
that, uh,
it.
Jim Carrey and
Tommy
Tommy
Lee
Lee Jones, what
Jones.
are you doing, man? I mean, you're just taking a paycheck, I guess.
I read that he took
Uh,
it. He turned it down initially and took it because his son wanted him to.
I get it.
Um,
I
yeah,
get it. I mean, uh, Nicholson.
yeah,
Uh, uh,
yeah. I mean, he's a great Joker. It's just again, he gets.
he
I
was
mean,
good, but he was leaning into the campy side, and I think that Batman movie kind of walked both sides of it.
hmm
Whereas Returns leaned all into the darkness, whereas I
yeah,
think Batman kind of did both. Yeah, I I love Tom Hardy so much. Like
hmm
I wanted more from Bane. I
yeah.
think there are moments. Like if
Oh,
you
for
look at
sure.
moments, I think you could put Bane on the list with Joker for, villainous moments. But
hmm
overall, I think I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I do
So
like Killian Murphy as Scarecrow. I think he was underrated. I love him in Batman Begins. Like that's a hard character to pull off because there's just
yeah,
some really fantastical elements to it with like
yeah,
the fear gas and the nightmares and stuff. And I think they did a great job of incorporating that into that story. Um,
they did because
eh,
it's really easy to get way out there with some of these villains.
yeah, yeah. So for Christopher Nolan to do that in a grounded way, I think was huge. Um, what are your thoughts on the patents in Batman that we're about to get?
I've not gotten any because I don't think about him or maybe in that way. I
Such
I'm
a
sure
Jason answer.
I'm sure I'll see it when it comes out.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
so burned. I see. Maybe I'm wrong. I didn't mind as terrible as those movies were. I didn't mind Affleck as
God,
Batman.
I literally
And
hang on. I've been doing days of notes, and things and research on this topic, and have literally not thought the word Ben Affleck once. I forgot completely that he played Batman. Um,
yeah, yeah,
he's
but
the
not in a
best part
standalone
of those
movie.
movies. No, but
Yes,
he's the best part of those movies.
yeah, yeah, he's fine, and I was kind of looking forward to that independent movie.
Yeah.
The- they're going back to the. Let me say this. I hope we don't get another origin story.
No.
And I think what I liked about Ben Affleck was this is tint of gray in the beard, been there, done that Batman who is just had it up to here. You know what I mean? Like I kind of liked that version. And so with Pattinson, I think of a slight man. Like I always think of him as kind of skinny and slight. And I don't ever think of my Batman that way.
Yeah.
And although Keaton, not Keaton.
Yeah.
Keaton and Bale are on the slighter side. I don't know why. I can't imagine it. I cannot imagine the Pattinson thing. And then I'm worried we're going to go back and I'm going to see his parents die again. And I don't need that.
I don't think we will. From everything I read about it, and it's Matt Reeves doing it, who did he rebooted the Planet of the Apes movies to, I think really great quality. The first two anyway. But he's doing it, and he said that Robert Pattinson one is going to be a more cerebral Batman. It's going to be him doing more of his detective skills and less just beating up goons, which I would like to see. We've never gotten much of that in the Batman movies and the comics. He's the world's greatest detective, so it's supposed to be kind of almost like a noir movie, is what he said. Like it's going to touch into that. So I think that could be cool. The approach is different. It's got like all of his villains in it, but more in like cameos of he's trying to solve a crime, so he's having to go through his sort of rogue gallery of villains. They've got,
I was just looking it up. So they got Zoe Kravitz as Selina Kyle and Catwoman.
Yep.
And they've got Paul Dano as the Riddler. That's
awesome.
And Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon.
Yes.
I like everything. I like everything he's in. Wasn't J.K. Simmons supposed to play? Oh no, he was.
He played Gordon, yeah.
In the last
the Batfleck movies.
Yeah. And there's John Turturro. They've got Peter Sarsgaard. Andy Serkis is playing Alfred.
Yeah. And
so
Colin
I guess
Farrell's playing Penguin.
Oh, I just saw that. Okay. Yeah. This seems like too much to give everybody their due. Also, I'll be interested to see Alfred as motion cap. That'll be interesting because I don't think Serkis does anything.
He's a talking iguana in this movie. Alfred is going to be. It's a different take. He's a talking iguana and a bowler.
Okay, interesting.
That is a modern approach. It's it's supposed to be commenting on the wealth gap. All right, let's get into best stuff, but I got to mention one other thing. Possibly the best thing to come out of all the Batman movies is the song "Kissed by a Rose" by Seal.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down. And I know there are other Seal songs, but I don't know them. I don't have a clue what they are.
He did a cover of "Fly Like an Eagle" by Steve Miller Band. I remember that.
I remember that coming out, but I remember liking the other one better. That song is too repetitive for its own good.
I remember thinking when that song "Kissed by a Rose" is in Batman Forever with the Val Kilmer one. I remember every time that song would come on the radio, I knew it was from the Batman movie because like the music video had scenes from the Val Kilmer Batman movie in it and stuff.
Yeah.
So it would come on the radio, and one time I was like in my head, I was like 6 or 7 when that movie came out. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, if I go put it on MTV right now, the video will be on. Like I guess in my head there was one broadcast tower that went to all our different mediums. So one time I ran to the TV, put it on MTV, and sure enough, the video was on. Oh. So then every time after that, if I was home and the song came on, I would run to the TV and put it on and be like, I must have missed it. But I was sure that was how videos and radio worked for like a few years probably.
Interesting. That song is great. And I'm telling
fantastic.
You, if it ever comes on, my wife and I just sing our hearts out.
It. Yeah, absolutely.
Have to. It's
Watch the
excellent.
video too. The video is awful. Like it's just got all these clips of
It's
Val
just
Kilmer.
him. Isn't it just it's Seal on a roof standing in front of a bat signal,
Yeah.
just like singing his heart out, and then clips of Poison Ivy and Val Kilmer with his shirt off.
Poison Ivy's in the next one, but this would be the Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey one.
I'm sorry, not Poison Ivy. I meant
Nicole Kidman.
The Nicole Kidman character,
Chase
and I
Meridian.
for some reason blanked just a second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. Yeah. There's a
Nerd alert.
Yeah. Just go back and watch the video. Maybe we'll post it on our Facebook. It is really corny. Like the clips that they pick from that movie are baffling. Like they're not cool clips. Like, we'll post it on the Facebook page. It's pretty bad. But with that, Jason, take us into our best of section. I think we all know which movie we're going to be talking about.
Let's do it. Best of Batman 1990. Whoops, sorry, wrong notes. No, I'm joking. Best of Batman is Batman movies. The Dark Knight 2008. I think everybody that saw this come up on your device thought, that's probably going to be that one.
Yep.
Directed by Christopher Nolan, who also co-produced and co-wrote it. The second in his Dark Knight trilogy, starring Christian Bale, Heath Ledger, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Aaron Eckhart, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Morgan Freeman, huge cast of characters.
Mm-hmm.
Did over $1 billion in revenue worldwide. It was the highest grossing film of 2008 and currently the 46th highest grossing of all time. In 10 or 12 years ago, it was the fourth highest.
Right. Yeah. The Dark Knight is in highest grossing films of all time is just behind The Nut Job 3.
Right. That's where it's a problem. Nominated for 8 Academy Awards. It won 2 of them. It won for sound editing, and of course it won for Heath Ledger in his posthumous win. I'm assuming folks know this, but in January of 2008, after he had completed his filming, but before the film's release, Heath Ledger died of a prescription drug overdose, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Complications from a mix of prescription drugs.
Yeah.
Really gut punching. It
was.
He when you think of what he could have done, what this last 10 years would have been, and you know what, somebody should go back and look at the movies of the last 10 years and just insert him into, all right, what role would have gone to him?
Yeah.
Right. What Colin Farrell role would he have done? Or what? I'm trying to think of other similar type actors. Heath was on such a trajectory, and not to mention he's with Michelle Williams, and they had a child, and that loss that they both feel deeply, but just to the community, it's just a huge hit.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was working at Circuit City, and I was very jazzed about this Batman movie. I love Batman Begins. Again, I'd been a Batman fan growing up. I was really excited about this movie, and I was working at Circuit City in the TV department one night, and when a coworker was like, "Man, Heath Ledger died," and I was like, "What?" Because I was new. I mean, that was at that point we were far enough, and I mean they were in post production. The movie came out, of course, a few months later, and they had already released some pictures and some marketing material with him on, with like, I don't think you'd gotten a full look of him yet or anything in it, but I was really excited for him in it. And yeah, I mean, just like you said, I mean, he had started his career, in, your sort of, romantic teen comedy fare, but he, if you read about him, he made like a conscious choice to not, he could have made a lot of money just being, the pretty face in a bad movie. And, he really pushed himself artistically in a way that I appreciate. And, with Brokeback Mountain, he's fantastic in that. He's really good on The Patriot, which is not a great movie, but he is great in that role. And,
he also made this epic, right? This huge epic, Four Feathers, which is an okay movie. It didn't get any, but I thought his commitment to these kind of large, sweeping, dramatic things was, I don't know, I don't know, a feather in his cap.
Right.
Pardon the pun. Um, but I mean, you could think of him as 10 Things I Hate About You, or
Hmm.
what I think is my other favorite performance behind The Dark Knight is probably A Knight's Tale.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. That's a great one. I love that movie.
He's so
And
good.
yeah, again, he delivers like a better performance than that movie deserves. And you could say the
No,
same for like The Patriot. It's
yeah,
just like that movie didn't deserve that great of a performance, and he, you know,
yeah.
um, definitely wasn't an actor who phoned it in. And I would have liked to have seen what he would have done.
You're right. So this movie was inspired by many of the classic stories, several that you mentioned earlier that came out of that 80s kind of renaissance. The Dark Knight Returns and The Killing Joke had a tremendous amount of influence on the screenplay for this film. Hey, I'm gonna throw out some trivia, some Dark Knight trivia for you, Jesse.
Okay.
All right. So, what other actors were considered for playing the role of Harvey Dent?
Harvey Dent. Oof. Billy D. Williams.
No.
Well, if you
It also
recall,
went out.
he was Harvey Dent in the Batman movie with Michael Keaton, the first one. He played
Yes,
Harvey
he
Dent
was. You're
and
right.
had it in his contract that he was supposed to play if whenever they turned him into Two-Face, he would get to play him. And when they cast Tommy Lee Jones, they broke his contract and they had to he got paid. The same thing happened with Marlon Wayans in those movies. Just fun fact there for you. Marlon Wayans was cast as Robin, fitted for a
Yeah,
costume, signed a
and they had to pay
contract.
him. Yeah,
Yeah, he got paid like he
go.
was in the movie. So
Yeah.
anyway, but this Harvey Dent that was played by Aaron Eckhart, I don't know. I have no idea.
So, Matt Damon, Mark Ruffalo, and Ryan Phillippe were all uh, considered for this film. Nolan chose Eckhart because he reminded him of Robert Redford, had a kind of that vibe, and
Ah,
he liked that vibe.
Aaron
Um,
Eckhart is very good in that movie in The Dark Knight. I love the way they did the Harvey Dent story arc. I think it was perfect.
yep. Also, another quick little fact: the Joker freaked Michael Caine out so much he forgot his lines in one scene.
I
Um,
can see that.
yeah, that the
So
elevator doors open and
yeah,
out pops Heath Ledger, and it freaked him absolutely. Just freaked him out.
can I
So
mention one thing real quick?
yeah,
So in that scene, in The Dark Knight, when Batman or Bruce Wayne is having his like fundraiser for Harvey Dent, and the
yeah,
Joker crashes it, and Bruce
the
Wayne,
best scene I think.
I love that scene, yeah,
Yeah,
but Bruce Wayne runs off and he goes and gets in his Batman suit and then comes back out and beats up the Joker or gets in a fight with the Joker and beats up some henchmen.
yeah.
Um, he comes back out fully equipped in the suit with the black eye paint on. So he took the time to
Yeah.
go back there and not just put his suit on. I get that. He has to put the suit on. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a life or death situation. And he took the time to meticulously put on his black eye paint.
Look, I don't think he puts on the black eye paint. I think he has a contraption that he closes his eyes and it sprays it on there, and it is just part of him becoming the character.
That's a
Um,
good point.
but I've always had a problem with that. Like if you have to quickly change, this is not a Superman run into a phone booth.
No.
This is I need a mirror.
Yeah.
I need my compact.
Yeah.
I need
I
I
need an
need
eyeliner
time.
pencil.
I need eyeliner pencil. I need time. Um, I need a glass of wine. If I'm
Right.
gonna get this done right,
I need some
right,
Celine Dion in the background.
that's
And
right.
yeah.
I think he puts on "Kissed by a Rose," but
So, because and the thing is the movies don't acknowledge that he wears eye makeup, because in Batman Returns, when Michael Keaton pulls off his mask in that one, at the climax of that movie, he rips his mask off in front of Catwoman. I think
yeah,
he doesn't have eye makeup on. Like he has it
Yeah.
on when the cowl's on.
Sure.
This scene cuts, he pulls it off, and there's no eye makeup on. And I always thought it would look so cool if they would show him without the mask on, and it's just like really smeared, like like running, like hey, look like war paint almost. I think it would look
Yeah.
cool. They
I
never
agree.
touch on it. But
No, they
anyway,
don't. It's really ridiculous. No, that is the best scene in the movie. All right, so I was thinking about this. Like, what can I say about The Dark Knight? In my opinion, this is by far the most finely crafted superhero movie ever made.
yeah,
Um, the mixture of Nolan's visual palette, which I think there are a couple of hallmarks of, when you've seen a Christopher Nolan film,
hmm
just the nothing's too bright. Everything, there's kind of this muted color palette that he always uses, but
hmm
his mixture of IMAX photography, which this was the first film to have a 28 minutes of IMAX footage in this,
yeah,
which really just changes the way it's viewed. The mixture of that, plus I love that Christopher Nolan, in this world of digital photography, it's like he's like the anti George Lucas. He
hmm
uses real film, he uses practical effects, and I really think that makes this film stand out against some of the other superhero movies, which are just this kind of cartoony, uh, cartoony end game that it always, pardon the pun again, that it becomes this thing where it's just every comic, even if they do practical early, it ends up with two cartoons punching each other, and you
right,
don't get that from this movie at all.
no,
This film and its predecessor, Batman Begins, had the privilege of existing before the Marvel MCU, so they didn't have to compete with the Avengers or Spider-Man or Black Panther, and this wasn't dark for the sake of being dark like some of the other DC things were. I think the other DC movies, the Batman versus Superman and these other things, they had to differentiate themselves from
yeah,
Marvel, and they have a specific visual style that Zack Snyder has, which is something I don't like.
right.
But these movies just they weren't, I don't think they were consciously making a choice or
Yeah.
building themselves in any way.
Well, I think there's a difference in gritty and grounded, and these movies are
Interesting.
grounded.
They are.
This
They
is
are.
like this is what it would look like if Batman existed in the real world versus the DC extended universe that has since I guess been scrapped and has
No,
now
you're right. I
a
don't think
failure.
Superman. I don't
Is
think
a
Superman or Martian Manhunter exists in this world.
No, not at all.
No.
And 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 I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with DC, obviously wanting to, they've got some stuff to figure out if they want to do their own sort of combined universe like Marvel has. But and we could get into a whole podcast on the problems with these new ones they've been trying to do. But the Dark Knight movies I think worked in that it just, like I said, it wasn't trying to be gritty. It just was like let's figure out how can we do Scarecrow in a real world situation.
Right.
It's not them trying to
Right.
be gritty or trying to be dark. It's just them trying to make this exist in the real world, and that gives it sort of a gritty feel. But there's been other comic book adaptations that have since tried to capture that tone, and again, they do it for the sake of being gritty, it was very organic in the way Christopher Nolan portrayed everything and gave these modern like real world spins on some really fantastical stuff from the Batman mythology and knocks it out of the park. I mean, I love those movies, and
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever get one better than The Dark Knight.
Probably not. And again, I think it's that mixture of visuals with great storytelling and fantastic performances. Which I mean, I think Bale is more than capable. I think Gyllenhaal is really good. Thank you, Mad Money, for taking Katie Holmes away.
Yeah,
I think Eckhart is actually underrated. I think he's one of
yeah,
the most underrated actors of the last decade. I really think he's great. But Ledger is on another level. We've already talked about it. Honestly, I'd put him in the lines of the greatest portrayals of insanity in film history,
yeah,
which to me, the ones that came to mind first off were De Niro in Cape Fear, Javier Bardem in No Country, and Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange. Those, when I think of insanity on the screen, that's what I think of, and I put
hmm
him right up in that class. Um,
yeah.
It's funny. Now we've seen two people take on the role of the Joker and really disappear into those roles, and they've both won Oscars for it. Who do
Yeah.
you think did it better? I'm gonna put you on the spot. Ledger versus Phoenix. Who's your Joker?
Um, I'm gonna go Ledger, but that's just I think that's because he is very clearly the Joker from the Batman mythology, and
Yes.
there is just something what I love about his performance. I think my favorite part of Heath Ledger as the Joker in this movie is that every scene you see him in as the Joker, his personality is different, and it's very
Yeah.
schizophrenic in
Yeah.
a terrifying way. There's like when the scene where he comes into the fundraiser we were just talking about, he's very
Yes.
confident and he's very cocky and he's very brash and he's just like, you know, he's a completely different presence than he was when he was in the room of gangsters, and he's like,
Yep.
and he's very timid, and then like there's times where he's like playing up the psychotic part of him, like it's just he's a sociopath, but he's like versus a psychopath, which is how the Joker, I think Jack Nicholson portrays him more as a psychopath in his portrayal. Heath
Yep.
Ledger's was a sociopath who was just
Yep.
someone that he says in the movie, I'm just ahead of the curve, and that's what it kind of feels like, that he's almost just like
Mm-hmm.
it's like he's just exists. I love that his Joker's sort of his character just kind of exists on a different plane than everyone else seems to.
Yep.
I love Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal, but it's just it's a completely different type of performance.
No, they're not. It's completely opposite, and I think they can exist together. It's one thing I really like that the DC has done lately. I haven't seen the new Harley Quinn movie, but I hear good things about it. But they're trying to make good movies that feature their characters, whether they tie into anything. And I mean, we've talked about it before. Joker is a beautiful experience. He's not the best Joker, and it's not anywhere near The Dark Knight as far as a comic book movie, but it's a really in-depth experience. All right, that's really all my thoughts on that. If you haven't seen Dark Knight, why are you listening to this?
What are you doing?
Yeah, go see it. It's long. It's 2.5 hours, but it's great. You're gonna love it. I've seen it so many times, especially certain scenes like that scene we keep referring to, the kind of party scene. I've seen that scene 30 times.
It's
I will
good.
just put on the Blu-ray just to like, hey, I just need a little bit of this.
I mean, that opening scene, the opening bank heist, I remember they released before the movie came out as like a trailer sort of. And I just remember watching it over and over as many times as I could. Like I just loved it. I loved the pace of that scene.
So good.
It's great. I started to watch the movie the other night just in prep for this episode. I fell asleep like half an hour in, but that first scene and the real introduction to the Joker with that scene where it's in like the mafia meeting is just so good. I mean, and I saw it the night it came out in theaters and was just completely blown away. Like it's great filmmaking and all time performance from Heath Ledger.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, that's best of. Jesse, why don't you treat us, if we want to call it that, to the worst of?
Well, it's definitely there's no all-time performances in it. I'll give you that. I'll give that away right now. The movie
all-time worst.
So no, that's true. I'll give it that. But if Heath Ledger was operating on some advanced plane of acting, everyone in this movie is on the other end of the bell curve. So this is Batman and Robin, which may be the lowest rated movie we've ever talked about. It is currently 11% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Is it that good? Does it deserve 11%?
There's 10% of this movie is, I don't know about good, but it's entertaining. The movie was released June 20th, 1997. It was directed by Joel Schumacher, who was returning from Batman Forever, which he took over from Tim Burton, who sort of had some issues with the direction they were wanting to take it. As we sort of talked about, you had Batman Returns. Batman Returns went a little further with the slightly, it was darker, the tone was different, but it was definitely, they were at that point that Warner Brothers was concerned about marketing and merchandising. So for Batman Forever, they wanted to go to a much more family friendly version, and that was when they lost Tim Burton and Michael Keaton. This movie, so Batman Forever Joel Schumacher came in. Val Kilmer was in it. After that movie, it was a commercial success. And as were the other two, they, of course, wanted to go with a sequel. That's when we get Batman and Robin. Val Kilmer did not want to come back. Him and Joel Schumacher did not get along during the production. Joel Schumacher said that he was fired and he quit, whatever that means. It was mutual agreement, we'll say that. But the Batman and Robin, we all, I think if you're a kid of the 90s, you know very well. It starred George Clooney taking on the role of Bruce Wayne and Batman, Chris O'Donnell returning, Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, and Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy, which is great casting, but man, just what a, not a good performance by any stretch of the imagination. So again, after the commercial success of the previous Batman installments, this one went really hard in the campy direction, which was Joel Schumacher's intention. He wanted it to be kind of a throwback to the Adam West Batman of the 60s. So it went hard in that direction. It infamously featured rubber bat nipples.
Well, that was a feature of the Adam West Batman.
They put rubber nipples under his silk costume. So that's right. So yeah, this one it had also many close-ups of bat cod pieces.
Yes.
It inexplicably features a scene of Batman busting out his bat credit card, and most famously, of course, this movie features some Arnold one-liners that are corny even by Arnold one-liner standards. I'm talking, "Let's kick some ice." You're not
getting away with this.
I'm not doing the accent. "Let's kick some ice."
You're not sending me to Sakula.
And my personal favorite, "Stay cool, bird boy."
That is the worst Arnold I've ever heard.
Well, I don't do a good Arnold. I wasn't going to do it. You put me on the spot, man.
That's fine. That's okay.
Well, there's some great compilations on YouTube of his one-liners from this movie we'll post. The movie also features Bane, who was played by a professional wrestler named Jeep Swenson, who has since passed away, as many professional wrestlers do. But he plays Bane in this movie, although folks, fans of the Batman mythology, were quite upset with the portrayal of pretty much every character in this movie. Everyone is hamming it up, and Bane is basically a brainless henchman, which is far from what he was in the comics. He was like a brilliant scientist. So Batman and Robin was a commercial disappointment. It made $238 million, which sounds good, but it had a budget of $160 million. So once you factor in marketing costs and that kind of thing, the movie did not make any money. And it was critically destroyed. Again, 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. Patrick Stewart was considered for the role of Mr. Freeze, which makes more sense. But the character direction was changed when Joel Schumacher said he just sort of had this image of Mr. Freeze being carved from a glacier. So he wanted like a bodybuilder type, and that's how Schwarzenegger came in.
Interesting.
Also considered, so as we mentioned, Val Kilmer, of course, dropped out of Batman Forever. George Clooney came on, but before George Clooney, Joel Schumacher really wanted William Baldwin for Batman, which did not happen, of course. So that ensures that William Baldwin's most famous role will remain brother of Alec.
Interesting.
Who's more famous, William or Stephen? It's Stephen, right? You have Biodome.
William. No. Okay. So here's the order. Okay. It's Alec, and then there's a tremendous drop off. Then it is Stephen, but more for his nonsensical antics.
Yeah.
Then it is. Wait. Then it's Daniel, only because he was in Reservoir Dogs. And then it's Billy, the baby.
Daniel Baldwin's in Reservoir Dogs?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong.
Are you thinking of Michael Madsen?
You know what? Somebody fact check us and email us about this.
I don't remember Daniel Baldwin being in that, but it's such a steep drop off after Alec Baldwin that it almost doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay, he was not in Reservoir Dogs. But for some reason, I guess I'm thinking of someone else that was in that.
I think you're thinking of Michael Madsen, who does have a Baldwin sort of look. He played Mr. Blonde.
Daniel Baldwin. Yeah. Daniel Baldwin. I don't know why I could have sworn there was a Baldwin that was there, but Daniel, I think, looks the most like Alec, and therefore got some roles just out of sheer coincidence.
Right. It's his stand-in.
Yeah.
But anyway, they did not cast William Baldwin as Batman. Of course, George Clooney came in. George Clooney has since apologized for the movie. George Clooney, on paper, makes a great Bruce Wayne, but just not a good Batman. But I don't think anyone could have really pulled it off. Interesting bit of trivia that I remember hearing about years ago. For Batman Forever, when they introduced Robin, Christian Bale auditioned for that role and did not get it, and was thankful for it years later, because it probably would have cost him the role of Batman later on. So again, this movie was a big failure. They had a sequel planned before just ultimately everything got scrapped. So the sequel was going to be entitled Batman Unchained, and it would have featured Nicolas Cage or potentially Coolio as Scarecrow.
I love that. Sounds insane.
The casting meeting there, like, hey, we're going to do Scarecrow. Who are we thinking? I don't know. Maybe a Nicolas Cage type. Maybe Coolio. like, how do you jump from one of those to the other? Like, I could see like maybe Christian Slater, maybe Nicolas Cage. Nope, Nicolas Cage or Coolio. Batman Unchained was also going to feature Jack Nicholson returning as the Joker in like Scarecrow hallucination scenes. It was also going to introduce Harley Quinn, although she was going to be reimagined as the Joker's daughter versus his girlfriend.
I'm so glad that just remained in someone's brain and never got filmed.
Nicolas Cage also almost cast as Superman in the 90s.
He was in the McG Superman. Yeah,
which thankfully didn't happen. But so those sequel plans were scrapped after an underwhelming box office performance from Batman and Robin, poor critical response, and it caused basically the whole rethinking of the franchise in the future, with the interest going towards a Batman origin story that went through several drafts over the next 8 years, and until we got Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins in 2005. So I think you could make the argument that without Batman and Robin failing so badly, we would never have gotten Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, and I think that makes it all worth it.
I agree. I think it does make it worth it, even though, I was thinking about that $160 million budget. There had to have been $40 to $50 million just in neon paint, and black lights for some of the fight scenes.
Yes.
I mean, this movie is absolutely abysmal.
Yeah, it's bad. I loved it at the time, again, because I was a kid. I mean, I was 8 years old when this movie came out. So it was, I didn't care about story quality or anything. But I do remember even then being kind of like, why does Batman have a credit card? Why, like, right. His suit is like really blue and silver, and it's just like really terrible costume design. And it's bad all over. It is fun to go back and watch now, like to at least watch clips from, like, just bad acting compilations. Again, the Arnold one-liner compilations are pretty great, but it is amazing how far we came from Batman and Robin to the next Batman movie we get, as far as live action is concerned, was Batman Begins. And just tonally, it's amazing. Like, you're taking the same character, you're taking the same stories, and how completely different that interpretation can be in the hands of the right filmmaker.
It's unbelievable that Batman Begins was 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, this has been Best of Worst of Batman Movies.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Please subscribe and rate and review us. Find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, now on YouTube, and other places. So what is the other one? It's the Pocket Cast. That's what I was trying to think of. Pocket Cast is the one that the Android people are on.
Yes.
You can email us at bowopod@gmail.com. Speaking of that, I just want to give a shout out real quick. I wanted to give a shout out to Jessica, who emailed us this week and gave us a few ideas and said that she loved the I'll just read a couple of snippets here. That I laugh until I cry at nearly every single episode, especially Star Wars. So she's been listening to our episodes and enjoy it and gave us a ton of great recommendations.
Yeah.
I actually happen to have grown up with Jessica. So we were in high school together, and I just wanted to give her a shout out. Second shout out is someone who is a huge Batman fan, and I hope enjoys this. This is one of our listeners, Xavion, who is a huge Batman fan and has made his, I believe, even his birth, his first child's birth announcement, or maybe a wedding announcement, I honestly can't remember, was a Batman film that he made.
Oh wow!
So okay. Yeah, now he is all in on Batman. So, awesome. Xavier, if you're, as I know you're listening to this, I hope you enjoy this. But yeah, email us, reach out to us at bowopod@gmail.com. Hit us up on Facebook. I don't know if anybody's on the Twitter, but we're there. Hit us up, interact with us. Watch us on Instagram. We're trying to grow the Instagram, putting some little clips and snippets on there. We'll try to put some maybe some photos or other things that we can kind of engage you guys on Instagram. Check us out.
Yes. As always, thanks to the band Amigo out of Charlotte, North Carolina for the music throughout the episode, to Wes Forbus for our podcast artwork, and most of all, thank you guys for listening to Best of Worst of. Stay cool, Bird Boy. Master Wayne, I wanted to discuss something with you before you went out tonight.
Make it quick. I just put on my bad eyeliner.
Right. About that, sir, with the world currently going through a rather serious pandemic that likely came from a bat, public opinion of bats is not favorable at the moment. Perhaps a change is in order? For the sake of the public's trust in you, of course, sir.
I see. That's not such a bad idea, Alfred. The opportunity to reinvent myself, something stronger, more ferocious than a bat. I see, I like this. Something majestic and regal? What about this? Black Panther.
Quite taken, I'm afraid, sir.
Really? You know what? Wait, I got it. I am the fear in the hearts of criminals. I am Gotham's protector. I am the Tiger King.